I just would like to say before I start this video that I'm going to try not to say some of the victims' names. Obviously, telling a story, I will have to, but I'm going to do a separate video just the victims in to remember them. Harold Frederick Shipman was born on the 14th of January 1946 on the Bestwood East Council estate in Nottingham, the second of the three children of Harold Frederick Shipman, a lorry driver. His working-class parents were devoted Methodists when growing up. Shipman was an accomplished rugby player in the youth league. Shipman passed 11 plus in 1957 and moved to a high pavement grammar school, Nottingham, which left in 1964. He excelled as a distance runner, and in his final year at school he served as a vice-captain of the athletics team. Shipman was particularly close to his mother, who died of lung cancer when Shipman aged 17. Her death came as a manner similar of what later became Shipman's own mother's operator in the late stage of her disease. She had morphine administered to her at home by a doctor. Shipman witnessed his mother's pain subside her terminal condition until her death on the 21st of June 1963. On the 5th of November 1966, he married Primrose May. The couple had 4 children. Shipman studied medicine at Leeds School of Medicine, University of Leeds, graduate in 1970. Shipman began working at Pontefract General Infirmary in Pontefract, West Riding of Yorkshire, and in 1974 he took his first position as a general practitioner (GP) at the Alberham Ormond Medical Centre in Totmod. The following year, Shipman was caught fraudulent prescription of pethidine for his own use. He was fined £600 and briefly attended a drug rehab clinic in York. He worked as a GP at the Donnybrook Medical Centre in Hyde, Great Manchester in 1977. Shipman continued to work as a GP in Hyde through the 1980s and established his own surgery at 21 Market Street in 1993, becoming a respectful member of the community in 1983. He was interviewed in an edit of the Grand Television Coroner aired documentary The World in Act on how mental illness should be treated in the community. A year after his conviction on charge of murder, the interview was rebroadcast on Tonight with Trevor. In March 1998, Linda of the Bruckner Surgery in Hyde expressed concerns to John, the coroner of the South Manchester district, about the high death rates amounting in Shipman's patients. In particular, she was concerned about a large number of cremation forms for the elderly women that had needed a counter-signature. The police were unable to find significant evidence to bring charge and closed the investigation on the 17th of April. The Shipman inquiry later blamed Great Manchester Police for assigning inexperienced officers to the case. After the investigation was closed, Shipman killed 3 more people, and a few months later, in August, the taxi driver John told the police that he suspected Shipman of murdering 21 patients. So we're still on John, the taxi driver. Shaw became suspicious as many of the elderly customers he took to the hospital, who, while seemingly in good health, died in Shipman's care. Shipman's last victim was Kathleen Grundy, a former mayor of the Hyde, who was found dead at her home on the 24th of June in 1998. Who was last seen the person to see her alive. He later signed a death certificate and recorded that the cause of death is an old age. Grundy's daughter, Angela Woodruff, become concerned when the fellow solicitor Brian Berg informed her that a will had been made, apparently by her mother, with doubt about its authorization. The will exclude Woodward's and her children, but left $386,000 to Shipman at Berger's urge. Woodward went to the police, who began an investigation, and Grundy's body was examined and found to contain traces of dipamorphine, heroin, often used for patients to control in terminally cancer patients. Shipman claimed that Grundy had been addicted and showed them comments he had written to that effect in his computerized medical journal. However, the police examination of his computer and showed that the entirety were written after her death. Shipman was arrested on the 7th of September 1998 and was found to own a Brother typewriter of the type that used to make the fraudulent will prescribed for murder, a 2000 book by journalists Brian Watts and Jane suggested that Shipman forged the will either because he wanted to be caught because his life was out of control, or because he planned to retire age 55 and leave the UK. The police investigate other deaths. Shipman had certificate and investigated 15 suspected cases. They discovered a pattern of his administration lethal doses of dipamorphine, signed patients' death certificates, and then falsely medical records to indicate that they had been in poor health. In 2003, David Spiney suggested that motorizing could have led to an alarm being raised at the end of 1996 when there were 67 excluding deaths in female ages over 65 years, compared with 119 by 1998. Shipman's trial began at Preston Crown Court on the 5th of October 1999. He was charged with the murder of 15 women by lethal injection of dipomorphine, all between 1995 and 1998. Shipman's legal response tried to unsuccessful to have Grantley's case tried separately from the others as the motive was shown by alleged forgery of Grant's will. On the 30th of January 2000, after 6 days of deliberation, the jury found Shipman guilty of 15 counts of murder, 1 count of forgery. Mr. Justice Thorpe subsequently sentenced Shipman to life imprisonment on all 15 counts of murder, with a recognised that he be subject to the whole life terror to be served connection with his sentence of 4 years for forgery of Grantley's will on the 11th of February, 11 days after he was convicted. Shipman was struck off the medical register by the General Medical Council (GMC). 2 years later, Home Secretary David Black confirmed that the judge's whole life terror just months before British government minister lost the power to set minimum terms for prison. While the authorities could have brought many additional charges, they concluded that a fair hearing would be imposed in view of the enforced public surrounding the original trial. Furthermore, the 15 life sentence already imposed redundant further unnecessary. Shipman became friends with a fellow serial killer, Peter Moore, while in prison. Shipman denied his guilt, disputing that the satisfactory evidence against him was never made any public statement about his actions. Shipman's wife, Prime Rose, mentioned that he was not guilty even after his conviction. Shipman was the own doctor in his history of Britain, medically found guilty of murder his patients. Shipman hanged himself in his cell at HM Prison, Wakefield, at 6:20 a.m. on the 13th. From Her Majesty's Prison Service indicate that he had hanged himself from the window bars of his cell using his bedsheet. After Shipman's death, his undertaker van for post-mortem examination. West Yorkshire coroner David Hinchcliffe eventually released the body to his family after the inquest was opened. A journey short after, some of the victims' families said they felt cheated as Shipman's suicide meant they would never have a satisfaction of a confession nor answers as to why he committed his crimes. Sir Home Secretary Dave Black admitted that celebration was temporary. You'll wake up and you receive a call telling you Shipman has topped himself, and you think it's too early to open a bottle, and then discover that everyone is very upset that he's done it. Shipman's death divided the nation newspapers, with the Daily Mirror branding him a cold coward and condoning the prison service for allowing his suicide to happen. However, The Sun ran a celebration front page headline: Ship, horror. The Independent called for an inquiry into Shipman's suicide to look more widely at the state of the UK's prisons as well as the welfare of the inmates. In The Guardian, an article by Sir David, who had formerly served as Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons, suggests that the whole life sentence to be replaced by a different sentence for this would at least give prisoners the hope of eventual release and reduce the risk of their ending their own lives by suicide, as well as marking the management ease. For the prison officers, Shipman's motive for suicide never established, though he responded told his problematic officer that he was considering suicide to ensure his wife finances secure after he was stripped of his National Health Service pension. Primrose Shipman received a full NHS pension. She was not have been entitled to it if Shipman had lived past the age of 60, added there was no evidence that Primrose, who had considered to protect Shipman's innocence, despite the overwhelming evidence, had begun to expect his guilt. Shipman refused to take part in a course which would have encouraged acknowledgement of his crimes, leading to a temporary removal of his privileges, including the option of telephoning his wife during this period. According to Shipman's cellmate, he received a letter from Primrose exhorting him to tell me everything, no matter what. A 2005 inquiry found that Shipman's suicide could not have been prevented, predicted, or prevented, but that proceedings should nonetheless be re-examined. After the Shipman's body was released to his family, it remained in Sheffield for more than a year. Despite multiple failed reports about his funeral, his widow was advised by police against burying her husband in case that the grave was attacked. Shipman was eventually cremated on the 19th of March 2005 at Hutcliffe Woods. The cremation the cremation took place outside normal working hours to maintain security and was attended only by Primrose and a couple of children. In January 2001, Chris Gregg, a senior West Yorkshire police detective, was selected to lead an investigation into the 22 of the West Yorkshire deaths. Following this, Shipman inquiry submit in July 2002 claimed that he had killed at least 218 of his patients between 1975 and 1998, during which time he practiced in Totmore in 1974 to 1975 and then Hyde 1977 to 1998. Gene Smith, the judge who submitted the report, admitted that the many more deaths of suspicion natural could not be identified as to Shipman. Most of his victims were elderly women in good health. In her sixth and final report issued on the 24th of January 2005, Smith reported that she believed Shipman killed at least 3 patients. She had serious suspicion about 4 further deaths, including that of a 4-year-old girl during an early stage of his medical career at Point Genuine Infirmary. In total, 459 people died while under the care between 1971 and 1998, but it is uncertain how many of these were murdered victims, as he was often the only doctor to certify the death. Smith established of shipment total victim over that 27-year period was 250. The GMC charged 6 doctors who signed a recommendation form for shipment victims with misconduct, claiming they should have noticed the pattern between Shipman's home visit and his patient's death. All of these doctors were found not guilty in October 2005. A similar hearing was held against two that Shipman had deliberate administration and a gross excluded dose of morphine. The Shipman inquiry recommended charges to Judge of the GMC in 2005. It's come to light that Shipman may have stolen jewelry from his victims in 1998. The police had seized over 10 grand's worth of jewelry they found in his garage in March 2005. When Prime Rose asked for it returned, police wrote to family of Shipman's victims, asked them to identify the jewelry. Unidentified items were handed to Assistant Recovery Agent in May. The investigation ended in August. Authorities returned 66 pieces to Prime Rose and abduction. 33 pieces that confirmed were not hers proceeded of the auction went to the Teamside Victim Support. The only piece the returned to the murdered patient's family was a platinum diamond ring, which the family provided a photograph as proof of ownership. A memory garden to Shipman's victims called the Garden of Tranquility opened in Hyde Park, Hyde, on the 30th of July 2005. As an early 2009, family of over 200 of the victims of Shipman were still seeking a compassion for their loss of their relative. In September 2009, a letter to Shipman wrote in prison to a friend were to be sold at auction, but followed the complete form of victim relate to the media. The sale of withdrawn. So yeah, that is it for this video. I was not going to use any of the victims' faces in this video. Yes, I've used some of the names, but I'll be putting the victims' faces, if I can find them all, on a separate video for like respect for them. But yeah, I think what's good in this case is that the medical board have changed some of the rules in proceeding from this. I can understand some of the victims when he committed suicide were not the families were not happy because they would like him to confess and why he did it. But, he didn't confess when he got arrested. Do you think if he spent, whole life in prison, he's going to confess? No, I doubt it. And I understand, yeah, it's cowardice to do that, especially when you've hurt a lot of people's lives. But was he hurting inside as well? Leave your comments. What do you think?